Today, we're back here in the tackle room and we're talking about why you struggle to catch fish in the wintertime, even with scented baits. Chances are it's because you are using that scent all wrong. Stick around, we're going to talk all about it. Got him. Oh, that's a nice one. Goodness gracious, and we just keep catching fish. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing. Now before we get started, I want to remind everyone that at the end of this month, I will be doing a colossal bait giveaway. Inside, you'll be getting some of my handmade jigs with custom skirts and the jig heads and everything I make myself. And those are super sticky hooks. I only use Mustad and owner hooks in my jigs. In addition to that, you'll be getting a few bags of my homemade soft plastics. They're salted and they have my special stinky juice in them. But just in case that's not enough, well, we're going to be throwing in a few packs of Zoom trick worms because you got to have a few standbys, your old favorites on hand, as well as a couple of Booyah buzz baits I'm going to throw in there, and even, well, the Strike King Thunder Cricket. And I'll also probably throw in a Yo-Zuri jerkbait, maybe a couple of crankbaits. Who knows? It will be packed with the good stuff. So be on the lookout for that toward the end of this month. Now, we were talking about struggling to catch bass in the wintertime, especially or in spite of using scents. Well, quite honestly, a lot of people use scents the wrong way, and that's why they don't have success with them. For a long time, I never really was a big believer in scents. I didn't think it really mattered that much, but over time, I've really started to change my tune, and it had to do with how I was fishing those scented baits. It really does. It matters how you fish them. You can't just squirt your scent on there and then throw it in the water and expect a fish to bite it. So there are a few factors and considerations you need to keep in mind when you're fishing scented baits. I want to rewind just a little bit. Let's go back a couple of videos ago. And you guys remember I said that we were fishing in stained water down here. We've had a lot of wind. We had that great big winter storm that came through with 70-mile-an-hour winds and blew everything out. That water was muddy. And we've had some really strong storms blow through since then. That water has not had a chance to clear up very much with all that wind churning it up with the waves, and all that rain washing mud down into the lake. The big lake is very stained right now. And in the last video, well, you'll notice that I did this. So I want to take one out. Not that one. I want this one. I want a brown one. Only one viewer on Reddit picked up the fact that I used a brown worm in muddy water. A wacky rig, for that matter. Now think about that. A wacky rig in muddy water is one thing. It's not very intrusive. It's not very loud. It doesn't have any flash to it. So what's the drawing power? Well, it's going to have to be the scent. And to prove that, I purposefully picked a color that was not going to show up well in that muddy water, a brown worm. It was just basically going to fade out against that murky background. And I did that on purpose because I wanted to see if scent alone from soaking my worms in goat juice, if that was strong enough to attract the bass. And it proved to be the case. So I was able to switch things up after I made that, after I was able to prove that point. So the reason I was able to catch some nice fish in that muddy water, even with using a wacky rig and a brown worm, was because of one word, and that's current.
Got him. He's swimming at me. There he is. He's fighting. He knows he's hooked now. That's another one on the wacky rig. That's another one, nice and slow. Oh, don't do that. That's another one, nice and slow. That's another nice bass right there. Right in the top of the mouth, right in the top of the mouth. Come on now. Oh, give me my hook back. There we go. Alright. That's another nice fish. Pound and a quarter. Very nice, beautiful bass. Gorgeous bass.
And a lot of anglers forget to think about current, especially when they're fishing something that's scented. Now, when you're fishing an unscented bait, well, current isn't going to be as big of a role, although it still will play a huge part, as far as locating the bass, because we've talked about it before. All species of black bass, largemouth, smallmouth, spots, Guadalupe, shoal bass, whatever, they all set up in current. Now, they relate to that current differently. Smallmouth and spots really love to be in the strong stuff, while the weaker currents, that's where your largemouth are going to be. If you got a lot of strong current in there, you're going to find those largemouth tend to back off to the side a little bit. Now, they still want that easy meal and have that food come to them, so they're still going to be relating to that current and not avoiding it, but chances are they're not going to be out in the middle of it if it's really strong. Now, that matters whenever you're using a scented bait. Well, why does it matter? Because scent goes downstream. You need to think about that when you're fishing a scented bait. Whenever you are spraying scent on your bait and throwing it in the water, that's the first consideration, is scent goes downstream. Those bass are set up in that current, waiting for things to come to them, for them to, they can smell it, they can taste it, or whatever. That's going to be their cue more than anything visual, especially in murky water. Now, number two is they are preparing those baits wrong. Well, for a lot of guys, if you want to take that worm or whatever, give it a couple of squirts with your scent and fish it a couple of times, and then squirt it again, and then fish it a couple of times, and then squirt it again. And you can see that's not a very efficient process. You're not maximizing your efficiency on the water. The best way to do it is to soak those baits for as long as possible, at the very least overnight. But if you can soak them a week or longer, that's even better. Now, I've heard guys say, well, I need to drill holes, I need to poke holes in it to get that juice to penetrate. Trust me, it will penetrate. On a microscopic level, if you looked at the baits, if you looked at your soft plastic baits under a microscope, you can see that they're actually quite porous. So they will bring in that bait juice and they will retain it for much longer than you think they will. After working with those worms for 45 minutes, cast after cast after cast, they very much still smelled like Gulp minnow juice. So you don't have to poke a bunch of holes in them. And when you do poke a bunch of holes in them, only thing you're doing is you are weakening the integrity of those baits. And you're probably going to get less usage out of it. So those are things that you need to consider. Those are things that you need to think about whenever you're fishing a scented soft plastic, is current and how I've prepared it. So you put those two huge things together. If you are able to take, that soft plastic and soak it for a while beforehand in your favorite juice, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be bait fuel, although that's a popular choice. It can be the Gulp juice that they sell in the spray bottle. That can be a great option. It can be the Yum shad scent or whatever. It doesn't have to be what I use. It can be the shad scent, the garlic oil, or whatever is your favorite style, whatever gives you confidence. But I'm telling you, those plastic baits will retain that scent for a lot longer than you think they will. So when you're out there fishing, find those current stains. And I saw the other day, to prove this point, I saw the other day a guy on the lake, and he was actually doing what we talked about, which is kind of the source of this video. He was out there in his boat. He had a little John boat, and he was out there, And he did the old spritz on his worm, and he threw it over the side, reeled it in, started fishing. Well, as soon as he threw it in the water, he was already rinsing off most of the scent. But when he threw it, I noticed he was throwing into the back corner of a certain pocket on a little cove. And I didn't say anything to it, but the current was in the direction where he was throwing his bait, and he was maybe, 10, 15 feet from the bank where his lure was landing in the water in the back of the pocket. And I was thinking to myself, well, the little minnows right there against the bank, they know he's there, but everybody else does not know he's there. Ask anyone who's ever been trout fishing, right? You're in shin deep or even ankle deep water out there, and you cast your bait out, those little eggs that you use for trout fishing, and they bounce down the rocks until they land in a certain spot. Now, the trout are downstream. They will catch the scent, or they may catch the visualization of that bait. But a lot of times we know that trout are very smell-oriented fish. They're very wary. They spook very easy. Ask any trout fisherman, they'll tell you trout can be some of the hardest fish to catch a lot of times because of how wary they can be, how easily they can be spooked. So you've got to stay a good ways from them, and you've got to bring the bait to them and let them come and get it on their terms. In the wintertime, bass fishing can be very similar. Those fish are just sluggish. They're lethargic. They don't have a lot of energy to spare. We've got to go to them on their terms and match their energy level. You need to think about it in those terms. So, like I said, take those baits, soak them real good, and find those current seams. You're going to be very impressed at how well it turns, how you can actually put yourself on some really nice fish. Whether you're throwing a wacky rig in water or you're using the good old Mardi Gras rig, right? Tony B, that's what we're calling this. We're calling this the Mardi Gras rig. But it doesn't matter. If you're slow, if you're patient, and you've got that current in your favor where that scent can go to the bass, I know you'll be able to get some good bites, and you can really turn your winter fishing around and actually start having a really great day on the water. So there you have it. Current and how you apply that juice really needs to be taken into consideration whenever you're using scents for fishing. Current needs to be a consideration of how you're fishing every single time you go anyway, especially in the winter. You can find that whenever you work those things in conjunction, however, whenever you're using scents and you're using current together, hand in hand, your fishing will be off the charts. I'm telling you, you won't need to make a bunch of noise. You won't need to have a bunch of rattles. Let the bass come to you, and they will. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.